I looked my father in the eye when he said I had to sign over my 5-bedroom house to my sister. The table went silent, expecting a fight. Instead, I smiled and said, "Don't worry, I took care of it." They thought I surrendered. They didn't know that was not a promise. It was a warning, because within 14 days, everything they believed was their right would crumble with just a few clicks and a thin folder. My name is Stella Perry. I sat at the head of the mahogany dining table, my fingers resting lightly on the cool edge of a placemat. The air in the room was warm, smelling of roasted rosemary and garlic, but the atmosphere had just plummeted to absolute zero. My father, Glenn Perry, wiped his mouth with a linen napkin. He did not look at me with malice. That would have been easier to handle. Malice implies you are an opponent, someone worthy of engagement. Instead, he looked at me with the mild, bureaucratic indifference of a zoning board chairman denying a permit. "Delaney needs your 5-bedroom house," he said. He did not ask. He did not suggest. He stated it, as if he were commenting on the weather or the need to clean the gutters. Beside me, my younger sister, Delaney, didn't even look up from her phone. Her thumbs were flying across the screen, the backlight illuminating a face that was perfect, symmetrical, and entirely unbothered by the fact that our father was currently redistributing my property, like a feudal lord. "It is just logical, Stella," my father continued, pouring himself another glass of the Cabernet I had purchased yesterday. "You are one person, you are 34, you spend all your time at that clinic, dealing with broken people. You come home, you sleep, you go back. What do you need 5 bedrooms for?" I watched the wine swirl in his glass. "I bought this house in Westbridge, just outside of Raleigh, 3 years ago. I bought it because I wanted roots. I wanted a place that was mine, a sanctuary where the hardwood floors didn't creak with the weight of someone else's expectations. I had invited them to stay, temporarily, when my father claimed his liquidity was tied up in investments and Delaney was between conceptual phases of her life. That was 14 months ago. "Delaney has a vision," my father said, gesturing vaguely toward my sister. "She is building a brand, a legitimate enterprise." Delaney finally looked up, tossing her hair back. "It is not just a brand, Dad, it is a lifestyle platform, and this house. The lighting in the morning is perfect for the Wake Up with Lainey segment, but the current layout is all wrong. If I take over the master suite and turn the living room into the main studio, I can finally monetize. I need the space to create. I need a studio environment." She turned to me, her eyes wide and devoid of irony. "Stella, you understand, right? You are never here anyway. You could get a nice condo closer to the city, something low maintenance. This house is wasted on you. It is dead space." Dead space. I looked around the room. I looked at the crown molding I had paid extra for. I looked at the custom light fixtures I had spent 3 weekends selecting. I looked at the walls, painted a soft, calming gray that was supposed to help me decompress after 12-hour shifts at Harborline Recovery and Rehab, where I spent my days teaching stroke victims how to hold a spoon again. "It is for the family," my father said, his voice taking on that familiar, heavy tone of moral superiority. "We have to maximize our resources. Your sister is at a critical juncture. She needs a launch pad. You are already established. You are fine. You can survive anywhere. Delaney needs this stability to secure her future." The sentence hung in the air. "You are the soil. She is the flower." I felt a sudden, sharp clarity. It was not anger. Anger is hot. Anger burns fast and leaves you exhausted. This was something else. It was cold, hard, and permanent. It was the feeling of a glacier calving, a massive shift that happens deep underwater before the surface ever breaks. They were waiting for me to argue. They were waiting for me to say, "But I pay the mortgage," or "This is my name on the deed." They had prepared speeches for that. They had guilt trips loaded in the chamber, ready to fire about how family supports family, about how I was selfish to hoard space I didn't use, about how Mom would have wanted us to share. I didn't give them the chance. I picked up my water glass, took a slow sip, and set it down without making a sound. I looked my father in the eye. "Don't worry," I said, my voice soft, smooth, and utterly agreeable. "I took care of it." The tension at the table evaporated instantly. My father let out a breath he had been holding, his shoulders dropping. He smiled, a benevolent king pleased with his subjects' obedience. "Good," he said, nodding. "I knew you would see reason. Stella, I told Delaney, your sister is pragmatic. She understands legacy. We will call the lawyer next week to handle the transfer paperwork. Just a formality. Really, I will manage the asset. Keep things simple for you. Yeah, thanks, Stella, Delaney said, already typing again. I'm going to need painters in here by the second week of January. This gray is depressing. I need warm tones. Peach fuzz is the color of the year. I took care of it, I repeated. The smile on my face not reaching my eyes. They heard surrender. They heard compliance. They didn't know that sentence was the most dangerous thing I had ever said to them. I finished my meal in silence, listening to them discuss which walls they would knock down. I listened to them carve up my life like it was a Thanksgiving turkey. When I was finished, I stood up, cleared my plate, and washed it. I didn't ask for help. I never did. I am going to turn in, I said. Double shift tomorrow. Rest up, my father said, magnanimous now that he had won. You work too hard. I walked out of the dining room, down the hallway that I owned, and up the stairs that I paid for. I passed the master bedroom, the one with the bay window, and the soaking tub where my father had been sleeping for over a year because his sciatica required the best mattress in the house. I passed the second largest bedroom, the one facing south for the best light, where Delaney slept surrounded by ring lights and tripods. I walked to the end of the hall, to the smallest guest room, the one intended for a child or a visiting cousin. This was where I slept. In my own house. I closed the door and locked it. The click of the lock was the only sound in the room. I didn't go to bed. I went to the closet and knelt down. I pulled back a stack of sweaters I rarely wore and dragged out a small, fireproof safe. I spun the dial left, right, left. The heavy door swung open. Inside lay the architecture of my life, the deed to the house at 412 Maple Drive, the original loan document signed in blue ink 3 years ago, my birth certificate, and at the bottom, a manila envelope I had hidden away 6 years ago. I touched the edge of that envelope, a reminder of a secret I had kept to protect the very man downstairs who was currently planning to evict me. I didn't open the envelope yet. Not tonight. Tonight was about the immediate structure. I stood up and moved to the small desk in the corner. I opened my laptop. The screen glowed blue in the dark room, casting harsh shadows on my face. I logged into my primary bank account. The numbers filled the screen. I scrolled down, looking at the history. It was a hemorrhage of generosity. There was the mortgage payment, deducted on the first of every month, $2,800. There was the utility bill for the entire house. $450 last month. Delaney left the lights on all night for ambiance. There was the payment to my father's car insurance, $180. There was the payment to the credit card ending in 5590. Delaney's card. I had added it to my autopay 2 years ago when she was crying about a collection agency calling her. It was supposed to be for 3 months. I had been paying the minimum balance plus interest for 24 months. I clicked on the details tab for that card. Last month's charges: Sephora, $300, Delta Airlines, $400, business expenses, she called them. I sat back in my chair, the hum of the computer fan the only sound in the room. For years, I had told myself this was love. This is what you do for family. You help. You lift. When you are the strong one, the capable one, you carry the load because you can. I told myself they appreciated it. I told myself they loved me for it. But as I stared at the transaction history, I realized the terrifying truth. They didn't hate me. Hate requires passion. Hate requires acknowledging the other person's existence. They didn't see me at all, to them. I was not a person with dreams, or fatigue, or a need for sanctuary. I was infrastructure. I was the bridge they drove over to get to where they wanted to go. I was the foundation that held up the floor they danced on. You don't thank a bridge. You don't love a foundation. You just expect it to be there. And when it cracks, you don't ask if it hurts. You just complain that the ride is bumpy. Stella is the steady one, my father always told relatives. Stella is low maintenance. I wasn't low maintenance. I was just maintaining everyone else. My father's words from dinner echoed in my head. Delaney needs your 5-bedroom house. He wasn't asking for a favor. He was managing an asset. And I was just the current property manager he was firing because he found a more deserving tenant. I leaned forward. My hand moved the mouse. The cursor hovered over the tab labeled Scheduled Payments Transfers. This was the nerve center. This was the control panel for the comfortable life they were living downstairs. Everything was set to automatic. It ran like a silent, well-oiled machine, ensuring the lights stayed on, the cars stayed insured, and the debts stayed quiet. I clicked. The list populated. Mortgage, autopay, Duke Energy, autopay, State Farm, insurance, Glenn Perry, autopay, Visa. Ending in 5590, Delaney Perry, autopay, Verizon Wireless Family Plan, autopay. I stared at the mortgage payment. That was mine. That stayed. Then I moved the cursor down to the next line. State Farm Insurance. My father drove a 2-year-old sedan. He liked to tell people he paid cash for it. He didn't tell them I paid the premiums because insurers discriminate against seniors. I clicked on the little gear icon next to the payment. A menu popped up, edit or skip, cancel. My heart should have been racing. I should have been sweating. This was my father. This was the man who raised me. If I did this, his coverage would lapse within 30 days. If he got into an accident, he would be liable. But I felt nothing, just that cold, glacial calm. I moved the mouse. The cursor turned from an arrow into a pointing finger. Cancel. A warning box popped up. Are you sure you want to cancel this recurring payment? This may result in late fees or service interruption. I clicked yes. Payment canceled. I moved to the next one. Visa ending in 5590. Delaney's Lifeline. The card she used to buy the peach fuzz paint samples she was probably ordering right now. Cancel. Are you sure? Yes. I moved to the next one. Verizon Wireless. Cancel. Yes. I worked my way down the list. It was methodical. It was surgical. I was turning off the life support for a parasite. Then I came to the last item. A transfer of $500 set for the 15th of every month. The label simply read, Family Fund. This was the money my father claimed went into a high-yield savings account for emergencies. He had convinced me to set it up 5 years ago. You put it in, I manage it, and when you get married or need a new roof, it is there for you. Tax-advantaged. He had said, I knew, deep down, where that money actually went. But I had never touched it. I had let the lie stand because the lie kept the peace. I hovered over the cancel button. This was it. This was the severance. Once I clicked this, there was no going back to being the good daughter. There was no going back to the quiet dinners and the passive acceptance. This was a declaration of war. I thought about Delaney's voice. You can hire a condo. This house is wasted on you. I thought about my father's face. I will manage the asset. They wanted the house. They wanted to be the masters of this domain. Fine, but masters have to pay their own bills. I pressed down on the mouse. The plastic clicked under my finger. It was a small sound, barely audible in the quiet room. But to me, it sounded like the throw of a heavy switch. Cutting power to a city. Payment canceled. The screen refreshed. The list was empty. Save for my mortgage. I sat there for a moment, watching the cursor blink. My hand was steady. My breathing was even. Downstairs, I could hear the faint murmur of the television. They were probably watching a movie, drinking my wine, planning the renovation of my home, completely unaware that the ground beneath them had just ceased to exist. I closed the laptop. I put the safe back in the closet. I turned off the light and lay down on the twin bed in the smallest room of my 5-bedroom house. Don't worry, I whispered into the darkness, repeating the promise I had made at dinner. I took care of it. For the first time in years, I fell asleep the moment my head hit the pillow. The smell of Harborline Recovery and Rehab was a specific cocktail of industrial lemon cleaner, stale coffee, and human struggle. It was a scent that had seeped into my pores over the last 8 years. I worked as a senior physical therapist, a job that required a strange duality of tenderness and brutality, every day. I asked people whose bodies had betrayed them to trust me. I asked stroke survivors to lift legs that felt like lead. I asked car accident victims to bear weight on shattered bones that had only just knit back together. It was exhausting work. By the time I clocked out at 6 in the evening, my own back ached in a low, throbbing rhythm. My hands were often cramping from massaging knotted muscles and guiding stiff limbs, but there was a purity to the exhaustion at Harborline. When a patient groaned in frustration because they could not button their shirt, I helped them, and they looked at me with gratitude when they finally took that first unassisted step between the parallel bars. We shared a victory that felt tangible. There was a transactional honesty to it. I gave them my strength, and they used it to get better. My family was the opposite. I gave them my strength, and they used it to stay exactly where they were. I drove home that night after the dinner, the silence of the car wrapping around me. The memory of my childhood often played out in my head like a film reel where the focus was always slightly off. Delaney was the star. She was the golden child, the one with the bright blue eyes and the laugh that could charm a wallet out of a stranger's pocket. She was chaotic, vibrant, and messy. My parents spent their lives running behind her with a dustpan and brush, sweeping up her broken promises and abandoned hobbies. I was the other one. I was Stella. I was the child who did her own laundry at 12, because Mom was too busy helping Delaney with a science project she had forgotten until the night before. I was the one who packed my own lunch. I was the one who never needed a curfew because I never did anything wrong. I was low maintenance. I was sensible. You would think being the good child would earn you love. It does not. It earns you neglect. When you are a cactus, people forget you need water just as much as the orchid. They just assume you will survive on the moisture in the air. Buying the house in Westbridge was supposed to be my declaration of self. I was 31. I had saved every bonus, every overtime check, eating ramen and driving a beat-up Honda Civic so I could afford the down payment. I wanted a place that was mine. I wanted a garden where I could plant things that would actually grow. I wanted 5 bedrooms not because I had a large family, but because I wanted the luxury of empty space. I wanted to walk into a room and hear nothing but my own breathing. The day I got the keys, I sat on the floor of the empty living room and cried. It was the first time I felt safe. That safety lasted exactly 4 months. It started with a phone call from my father. His voice was tight, clipped, the way it got when he was trying to sell a lie. He told me there had been a complication with his portfolio. A liquidity issue was the phrase he used. He made it sound like a global banking error, not personal mismanagement. He just needed a place to crash for a few weeks while the funds cleared. Just until the first of the month. Stella, he had said, I do not want to burden you. Then Delaney called 2 days later. Her lease was up, and her roommate was toxic, and she needed a place to store her things while she looked for a studio apartment in the city. I will be out in 3 weeks, she promised. I just need a landing pad. They moved in on the same Saturday. I remember watching them carry boxes into my pristine hallway. I felt a tightening in my chest, a primal instinct that I ignored, because good daughters do not turn their families away. The erosion of my boundaries was slow, like water dripping on a stone. First, it was the rooms. My father looked at the guest room on the ground floor and sighed, rubbing his lower back. He talked about his knees, his hips, the stairs. He looked at the master suite, my suite, with its walk-in shower and the soaking tub. It is just for a few weeks, he said. That tub would really help my inflammation. You are young. Stella, you can handle the stairs. So I moved my clothes out of the walk-in closet. I moved my toiletries off the double vanity. I gave him my room. Then came Delaney. She walked into the south-facing bedroom, the one with the beautiful bay window that caught the morning light. I had planned to turn it into a reading library. The light in here is crucial for my content, she said, spinning around with her phone in her hand. If I am going to launch this lifestyle channel, I need production value. The basement is too dark. This room is the only one that works. So I moved my books into boxes. Delaney painted the walls a bright, aggressive white and filled the space with ring lights, racks of clothes she had not paid for, and mirrors. I ended up in the smallest room at the end of the hall upstairs. It was a room meant for a nursery or a home office. It barely fit a queen-size bed. I lived out of a single closet while my father snored in my master suite and my sister filmed Get Ready With Me videos in my library. The word temporary stretched and warped until it lost all meaning. Weeks turned into months. Months turned into a year, then 2, then 3. The financial bleed was subtle at first. It started with groceries. I would come home to a fridge full of organic kale, imported cheeses, and expensive wines that I did not drink. I put it on your card, Delaney would say, not even looking up from her laptop. I left my wallet in the other bag. I will Venmo you. The Venmo notifications never came. Then it was the utilities. My father liked the house warm in the winter 74 degrees. Delaney liked the air conditioning blasting in the summer. My electric bill tripled. When I brought it up, my father waved a hand dismissively. We are a family, Stella. We share burdens. I am handling the big picture investments. Once the market corrects, I will settle up with you. Settling up became a mythological concept. Like Atlantis, the requests grew bolder. My father's car insurance premium came due. He slid the bill across the counter to me one morning while I was making coffee. Cash flow is a little tight this week, he said. Handle this for me. It is better for your credit score if the household bills are paid on time. He said it as if he were doing me a favor, as if allowing me to pay his insurance was a lesson in financial responsibility. He was graciously teaching me. Then there was the day I came home early from a shift because a patient had canceled. I walked into the kitchen and heard my father's voice coming from the backyard. He was talking to Mr. Henderson, our neighbor, a retired accountant who meticulously manicured his lawn. I stood by the screen door, hidden by the curtain. "It is a lovely property, Glenn," Mr. Henderson was saying. "You have done a lot with the landscaping." "Thank you," my father said. His voice was expansive, proud. "We wanted something with good bones. I told the girls, if we are going to invest, we invest in quality. I put the deed in Stella's name for tax purposes. You know how it is, estate planning, but it is the family seat, a legacy for both of them." I felt the blood drain from my face. The family seat, tax purposes. He wasn't just living in my house. He was rewriting the narrative of ownership. In his mind, my name on the deed was a technicality, a clerical quirk. In his mind, he was the patriarch, the lord of the manor, and I was just the shell company he used to hide his assets. I backed away from the door, feeling sick. That night, I looked at Delaney. She was wearing a sweater I had bought for myself but never worn. It was cashmere. It cost $300. She had borrowed it from my closet without asking. "Nice sweater," I said, testing the waters. "Oh, this," she said, plucking at a piece of lint. "It is a little boxy, but it works for a cozy vibe. You should really buy more fitted things. Stella, you have no shape in this." She was criticizing the clothes she had stolen from me. I went to my room, my small, cramped room, and lay in the dark. I thought about the conversation I had with my father 2 years ago, right after they moved in. He had sat me down at the dining table, a stack of papers in front of him. "Stella," he had said, putting on his reading glasses, "I have been looking at your accounts. You are letting too much cash sit idle. And this mortgage structure? It is inefficient." He had pushed a document toward me. It was a power of attorney. "You are a brilliant physical therapist, honey," he said. "But finance, that is a different beast. You just sign this, and I can manage the assets for you. I can leverage the equity in the house, invest it, and double your net worth in 5 years. You won't have to worry about a thing. You just go to work and let Dad handle the heavy lifting." I had refused. It was the one time I had said a hard no. I told him I preferred to keep my finances separate. He had looked at me with such disappointment, such pity, as if I were a child refusing to eat vegetables. "You are stubborn," he had said, taking the papers back. "Just like your mother. You are leaving money on the table." I realized now that he hadn't stopped trying to take control. He had just changed tactics. He couldn't get me to sign the power of attorney, so he simply absorbed my life by osmosis. He took the house room by room. He took my income bill by bill. He took my authority conversation by conversation. I looked around the small bedroom. The walls were closing in. I had spent 8 years at Harborline teaching people how to stand on their own 2 feet. I taught them that pain was a signal, a warning that something was wrong. I had been ignoring my own signals for too long. I had always told myself I was supporting them. I told myself that because I was the strong one, it was my duty to carry them. But as I stared at the ceiling, tracing the shadow of the fan blade, I finally admitted the truth. There is a difference between support and exploitation. Support is a bridge you build to help someone cross a river. Exploitation is when they build a house on your back and complain that you are not standing still enough. I wasn't their safety net. I was their host, and they were feeding on me with a hunger that would never be satisfied. My father's demand at dinner that I sign the house over to Delaney wasn't a sudden break. It was the logical conclusion of the last 3 years. In his mind, it was already theirs. He was just asking me to formalize the theft. I rolled over and looked at the glowing numbers on my alarm clock. It was 2 a.m. My shift at Harborline started at 7. I would go there, and I would lift dead weight, and I would help people who actually wanted to get better. But when I came back, the locks would be the same, but the person opening them would be different. They thought they were dealing with Stella, the daughter who craved their approval. They didn't realize that Stella had died the moment my father claimed my house was his legacy. The woman who was left was something else entirely, and she was done paying the price for her own existence. The silence of the house at 3 a.m. was heavy, not peaceful. It was the kind of silence that amplifies the hum of the refrigerator and the settling of the floorboards until they sound like footsteps. I sat at my desk, the glow of my laptop screen cutting a harsh rectangle into the darkness. I was not sleeping. I was dissecting the corpse of my financial life. If you have ever peeled back the wallpaper in an old house, you know the feeling. You expect to find plaster, maybe a crack or two. Instead, you find rot. You find mold that has been spreading in the dark, eating the structure from the inside out while the surface looked perfectly fine. That is what I was doing. I was peeling back the wallpaper. I had already canceled the automatic payments for the obvious things: the insurance, the phone, the known credit card. But the unease that had started at the dinner table had not dissipated. It had hardened into a cold, sharp knot in my stomach. I opened a fresh spreadsheet. I needed to see it all in one place. I needed to visualize the system my father had built around me. I typed out the headers: mortgage, utilities, insurance, groceries, miscellaneous. Then I started logging the transactions from the last 12 months. The mortgage was $2,800 a month. That was the beam holding the roof up. I paid that. The utilities averaged $450. I paid that. The food bill was astronomical. Last month alone, the household had consumed $1,200 in groceries. I lived on salads and coffee. Delaney and my father were eating ribeyes and importing specialized mineral water. I paid that. But as I combed through the bank statements, scrolling line by line, my eyes caught something repetitive. It was a transaction labeled GBS Auto Draft. It was for $315. It happened on the 18th of every month, for 3 years. I had assumed GBS stood for General Bayside Sanitation, or some municipal fee I had forgotten about. I had never questioned it. That was my fatal flaw. I had trusted the labels my father gave things. I opened a new browser tab and searched for the merchant code. It was not sanitation. It was Granite Bay Services, a holding company for a high-interest credit lender. I froze. I did not have a loan with Granite Bay. I went back to the statement. I traced the history. $315 every month for 36 months. That was over $11,000. I closed my eyes and let the memory surface. 3 years ago, the week they moved in, my father had come to me with a stack of mail. "There is some setup fee for the new security system I installed," he had said, handing me a bill. "I put it on an auto draft to save paperwork. It runs through a third-party processor. Just let it ride. Stella, I will reimburse you from the family fund." The family fund, that was the myth that held this entire house of cards together. My mother passed away 10 years ago. She was a quiet woman, frugal, the kind who saved aluminum foil and washed Ziploc bags. After the funeral, my father had sat us down, looking solemn and weary. He told us Mom had left a nest egg. He called it the family fund. He said it was in a trust that he managed, designed to trickle out support when we needed it most. "It is not for cars or vacations," he had said, his voice trembling with faux reverence. "It is for the essentials, to keep the Perry family safe." Whenever I paid a large bill for Delaney, or covered my father's temporary cash flow issues, he would say, "Don't worry, the fund will sweep that back into your account at the end of the quarter." I checked my deposits for the last 3 years. There were 0 transfers from any external trust. 0. The only money coming into my account was my salary from Harborline. The reimbursements he talked about were just my own paycheck circling the drain. The family fund did not exist, or if it did, it was empty. The ghost of my mother was being used as a line of credit. I felt a wave of nausea, but I pushed it down. Nausea is a weakness. Investigation is a weapon. I navigated to the credit bureau website. I needed to see the full picture. I answered the security questions: my first pet, the street I grew up on, my high school mascot. The screen loaded, a little wheel spinning for what felt like an eternity. My credit score popped up: 780. It was an excellent score, a perfect score, almost. My father would cite this as proof of his benevolence. "See, Stella, I am protecting your reputation." But then I scrolled down to the open accounts section. My breath hitched in my throat. There were 5 active credit lines. I only owned 3 cards. I clicked on the first unfamiliar account. Sapphire Preferred. Opened 2 years ago. Credit limit, $25,000. Current balance, $18,400. I clicked on the second one. Granite Bay Rewards. Opened 3 years ago. This was the source of the GBS payment. The limit was $10,000. It was maxed out. I stared at the screen, my hand trembling over the mouse. I had not signed these applications. I had never seen these cards. Then I remembered the mail. Since my father moved in, he had insisted on getting the mail. "I need to stretch my legs," he would say, meeting the postal carrier at the curb. "I will sort it." "You are too busy to deal with junk mail." He wasn't sorting it. He was filtering it. He was intercepting the cards, the statements, the warnings. But why wasn't I in default? Why was my score so high? I clicked on the payment history for the Sapphire card. Minimum payment received. Thank you. Payment source, Stella Perry. Checking. I gasped. The sound was sharp in the empty room. He had set up the auto-pay for the fraudulent cards using my own bank account. He had buried the transactions in the sea of household bills he urged me to automate when he told me to just pay the total on the utility cluster. He was including the minimum payments on the debts he had racked up in my name. I was paying for the privilege of being robbed. I stood up and paced the small room. My hands were shaking, not from fear, but from a rage so pure it felt like clarity. It wasn't just greed. It was improved, streamlined efficiency. My father had turned me into a self-cleaning resource. He stole my identity to get credit, used my money to pay the interest so the credit remained good, and then used that good credit to borrow more. It was a perpetual motion machine of exploitation, and I was the engine. I walked to the door of my room and opened it a crack. The hallway was dark. I could hear the rhythmic snoring from the master bedroom, my bedroom. He was sleeping soundly. Of course he was. He had no worries. He had a daughter who functioned as a living, breathing ATM. I heard a noise from the other end of the hall, a door creaking. I went still. Delaney walked out of the bathroom. She was wearing silk pajamas and holding her phone, the screen lighting up her face. She wasn't looking where she was going. She knew the path by heart. She dialed a number and put the phone to her ear, leaning against the door frame of the room she had stolen from me. "No, listen," she whispered. Her voice was excited, breathless. "It is happening next week, Tuesday." I held my breath. "Yeah, the 5-bedroom, she continued. "I know it is perfect for the studio. Dad is handling the transfer. He said Stella is totally on board. She is practically begging to give it to me. She knows she does not fit the vibe here." She laughed. It was a cruel, dismissive sound. "No, I do not have to buy her out," Delaney said. "Dad says we are just doing a deed transfer. Gift of equity or something. He is working the angles. I will own it free and clear by the 1st of February. We can start the demo on the living room wall immediately." She paused, listening to the person on the other end. Delaney scoffed. "She will just get an apartment. She is never home anyway. Honestly, we are doing her a favor. She is drowning in this place. She needs something smaller, like a shoebox." She laughed again, pushed off the doorframe, and disappeared back into her room. I stood in the dark for a long time. She will own it free and clear. We are doing her a favor. They truly believed it. That was the most terrifying part. They had rewritten reality so thoroughly that in their version of the story, they were the heroes saving me from the burden of my own success. They weren't stealing. They were reallocating resources. They weren't parasites. They were visionaries. I went back to my desk. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't go down the hall and shake them awake. Instead, I opened a folder on my laptop and named it Evidence. I downloaded the bank statements. I downloaded the credit report. I took screenshots of the transaction histories. I found the emails where my father had generously offered to handle the bills. I traced the IP addresses of the logins for the credit card accounts. They all originated from this house, from devices named Glenn's iPad and Laney's MacBook. The next morning, the kitchen was bright and cheerful. My father was brewing coffee, the smell of dark roast filling the air. He looked rested, paternal. "Morning, honey," he said, pouring me a cup. "Sleep well." "Fine," I said. I took the cup. I didn't drink it. "By the way," he said, leaning against the counter, casual as anything. "I set up the notary for Tuesday afternoon, 2 o'clock. I know you have a shift. But if you could take a long lunch, it will only take 20 minutes. We just need to get those signatures on the deed transfer so I can file the county paperwork." He smiled. "Then it is done. One less headache for you to worry about." He wasn't asking. He was scheduling. "Tuesday," I repeated. My voice was flat. "Tuesday," he confirmed. "Just bring your ID. I have everything else typed up." I looked at him. I looked at the man who had taught me to ride a bike. I looked at the man who had forged my financial death warrant and called it love. "Okay," I said. "I will be there." He clapped his hands together. "Excellent. That is my girl. Always practical." He turned back to the stove to make eggs for Delaney. I walked out of the kitchen. I walked out of the house. I got into my car and drove to work. But I didn't go to the clinic immediately. I pulled into the parking lot of a frantic office supply store. I bought a fresh printer cartridge and 3 reams of paper. They wanted a signature. I would give them paper. I realized then that screaming at them would be useless. If I screamed, they would call me hysterical. They would tell the neighbors I was having a breakdown. They would gaslight me until I doubted my own name. No, you do not fight a system with emotion. You fight a system with bureaucracy. You fight it with records, with timestamps, with audits. My father thought I was a signing pen. He thought I was an instrument he could pick up and use to write his own fortune. He was right about one thing. I was going to write something, but it wasn't going to be a check. It was going to be an eviction notice, and I was going to write it in the language he feared most, the truth, notarized and in triplicate. The deadline was not written on a calendar, but it hung in the air of my house like the smell of ozone before a lightning strike. New Year's week, that was the finish line my father had drawn in the sand. We need to have the title transfer finalized before the first of the year. My father told me over breakfast on Wednesday. He did not look up from his tablet. It is a tax thing. New fiscal year. Fresh start. I do not want this dragging into January. He spoke with the crisp authority of a CEO addressing a subordinate, not a father asking his daughter to give away a $500,000 asset. The notary is ready, he continued, scrolling through a news feed. Delaney is ready. We are just waiting on you to get your ducks in a row. I buttered my toast, the knife scraping loudly against the crust. I am working on it, I said. These things take time. You do not have time, he snapped, his voice dropping an octave. He finally looked at me, and his eyes were hard. You are dragging your feet. Stella, I can feel it. Do not be difficult. This is for the family. The word family used to mean safety to me. Now, it sounded like a threat. By Thursday, the invasion had moved from paperwork to physical reality. I came home from a 10-hour shift at Harbor Line, my feet aching, to find a white van parked in my driveway. It blocked the garage, forcing me to park on the street. The side of the van read, Luminous Interiors, Lighting and Design. I walked into the house and stopped dead in the foyer. There were men in my living room, 2 of them, wearing coveralls, were standing on ladders, measuring the ceiling height. Delaney was standing in the center of the room, directing them with the sweeping gestures of a visionary director. No, the track lighting needs to run parallel to the window, she was saying. I need the shadows to fall behind me, not across my face, and we need to rip out these sconces. They are too suburban. Those sconces were hand-blown glass. I had bought them on a trip to Asheville 3 years ago. Delaney, I said, my voice cutting through the noise. She turned, not startled, but annoyed. Oh, hey, you are home early. Who are these people? I asked, dropping my bag on the console table. Lighting guys, she said, turning back to the workman. Ignore her. She just lives here. Anyway, can we do a dimmer switch that connects to Alexa? I need voice control for the mood. Delaney, I said, louder this time. You cannot remodel a house you do not own. She rolled her eyes and marched over to me, lowering her voice to a theatrical whisper. God, Stella, do not embarrass me. These are professionals. I am just getting a quote. I need to be ready to roll the second the papers are signed. I have a launch date for the channel. My followers are expecting a studio reveal in January. You are putting holes in my ceiling, I said. Our ceiling, she corrected. Or it will be, in like, 5 days. Why are you being so petty? Dad said you were cool with this. I never said I was cool with tearing out the fixtures, I said. My father emerged from the kitchen, wiping his hands on a dish towel. He had clearly been listening. He walked over and placed a heavy hand on my shoulder. It felt less like comfort and more like a restraint. Stella, relax, he said. The girls are just planning. Let your sister dream. She has a vision. You should be proud of her ambition. I am not stopping her ambition, I said, stepping out from under his hand. I am stopping her from drilling into the drywall of a house that is legally mine. My father's face darkened. The benevolent patriarch mask slipped, revealing the bully underneath. You are being selfish, he hissed. Look at you. You have a career. You have stability. You have this big, empty space that you do nothing with. Your sister is trying to build something. She is trying to create a future, and you are worried about some drywall. Where is your heart? It is not about the drywall, Dad, I said. It is about respect. Respect is earned, he countered coldly. And right now, you are acting like a jealous child. Delaney is the one with the potential here. She is the one who is going to put the Perry name on the map. You are just existing. The least you can do is get out of her way. I stood there, stunned by the naked cruelty of it. You are just existing, Delaney chimed in. sensing the shift in power. Seriously, Stella, you are rich. You make, what, $80,000 a year? You can afford to go anywhere. You could get a cute loft downtown. You could travel. Why do you want to stay here in the suburbs with us anyway? It is weird. You are 34. You should be independent. The irony was so thick I could taste it like metal. They were telling me I should be independent while standing in the house I bought, eating the food I paid for, wearing clothes purchased with my credit cards. I am independent, I said quietly. Then prove it, my father said. Sign the papers. Move out. Let your sister have her turn. I looked at them. I looked at the contractors on the ladders, who were awkwardly pretending not to hear the domestic dispute. I realized then that there was no reasoning with them. They had built a fortress of entitlement so high that logic could not scale it. If I said no, I wasn't just asserting my rights. I was destroying their fantasy. I would be the villain. I would be the evil sister who crushed Delaney's dreams and disrespected her aging father. They were banking on my guilt. They were banking on the fact that for 30 years, I had always chosen to be the good girl, rather than the right girl. I took a deep breath. I forced my shoulders to drop. I forced the tension out of my jaw. Fine, I said. I am sorry. It has been a long week. My father smiled. It was a victory smile. That is better. We are all stressed. Go upstairs. Take a bath. Let Delaney handle the creatives. I walked up the stairs. Halfway up, I saw a package leaning against the wall in the hallway. It was a large, flat cardboard box. The shipping label was addressed to Delaney Perry. I couldn't help myself. I peeked at the packing slip stuck to the side. Item custom acrylic signage. Neon pink. Text, the Delaney Daylight Studio. Price $800. Payment method Visa, ending in 4421. I didn't recognize the card number. It wasn't mine. It wasn't one of the fraudulent ones I had found yet. It was new. They were opening more accounts. They were accelerating. I went to my room and locked the door. I didn't take a bath. I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the closet where my safe was hidden. An hour later, there was a knock on my door. Stella. It was my father. I opened the door. He was standing there with a glass of wine, my wine in his hand. He looked casual, but his eyes were scanning the room. I was thinking, he said, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. With all the moving parts next week, the notary, the lawyers, the movers, things are going to get chaotic. I suppose so, I said. I want to make sure the important documents are secure, he said. The deed, the original loan papers, your birth certificate. We cannot afford to misplace anything during the shuffle. He paused, taking a sip of wine. Give me the key to your safe, he said. It wasn't a question. I have it handled. Dad, I said, keeping my voice level. Stella, he said, his tone warning. Do not start this again. You are disorganized. I have seen your office. Papers everywhere. I have a filing system downstairs in the master. I want to consolidate everything tonight so we are ready for Tuesday. I do not want to be hunting for the deed 10 minutes before the notary arrives. He held out his hand, palm up, expectant. I am doing this for you, he added, to keep you safe. You know how you get when you are stressed. You lose things. I looked at his hand. It was the hand that had held mine when I crossed the street as a child. Now it was a claw, reaching for the last scrap of leverage I had. If I refused, he would know I was fighting back. If I refused, the war would start tonight, before I was ready, before I had the legal framework in place. But if I gave him the key, he would open the safe. He would find the manila envelope, the envelope I had hidden 6 years ago, the envelope that contained the proof of his first betrayal, the one he thought was buried forever. My heart hammered against my ribs. I had to think fast. I do not have the key on me, I lied. I left it at work, in my locker. His eyes narrowed. You left the key to your home safe at a rehab clinic. I keep it on my work lanyard, I said, improvising. So I do not lose it, like you said. I can be disorganized. He stared at me for a long, long second, searching for the lie. I held his gaze. I made my face a mask of exhaustion and stupidity. See, Dad, I am just the dumb, tired daughter. Fine, he said, lowering his hand. Bring it home tomorrow. First thing, I want those papers on my desk by Friday night. Okay, I said. I will bring it tomorrow. Do not forget, he said. This is happening, Stella, with or without your cooperation. But it is a hell of a lot easier if you just cooperate. He turned and walked out, leaving the door open. I waited until I heard his heavy footsteps go down the stairs. I waited until I heard the television turn on in the living room. Then I moved. I didn't turn on the light. I worked by the glow of the street lamp outside the window. I pulled the safe out of the closet. My hands were trembling, but not with fear anymore, with adrenaline. I spun the dial. The door clicked open. I didn't take just the papers. I took everything. The deed, the loan documents, the passport, the birth certificate, and the envelope. I shoved them into my work backpack. I stuffed gym clothes on top of them to hide the bulk. Then I locked the safe again and put it back in the closet. It was empty now. A hollow metal box waiting for a thief. I grabbed a second bag. I packed my jewelry, the few pieces that had belonged to my grandmother, the ones Delaney hadn't borrowed yet because she thought they were old-fashioned. I packed my hard drive with my photo backups. I packed the physical copies of the bank statements I had printed yesterday. I looked around the room. It was the room of a guest. There was nothing left on the surfaces that mattered. I put on my coat. I grabbed my car keys. I walked downstairs. "Where are you going?" Delaney asked from the couch. She was flipping through a paint fan deck. "Pharmacy," I said without stopping. "Migraine. Pick me up some sparkling water," she called out. "The lime kind." "Sure," I said. I walked out the door, into the cold December air. I drove 3 towns over. I didn't go to the pharmacy. I went to a 24-hour self-storage facility in an industrial park near the airport. It was a bleak, concrete place surrounded by barbed wire. But to me, it looked like a sanctuary. I rented the smallest unit they had, a 5x5 locker. I paid in cash. I walked down the fluorescent-lit hallway, the echo of my boots sharp on the concrete. I opened Unit 402. It was empty, smelling of dust and dry air. I placed my backpack and the bag of valuables in the center of the floor. I stood there for a moment, looking at them, my identity, my history, my ownership. It was all here now, under a padlock only I controlled. I felt a strange lightness in my chest. For the first time in 3 years, my father did not know where my life was. He thought it was in a metal box in his guest room, waiting for him to seize it. He was wrong. I drove back to Westbridge. On the way, I made a phone call. It was late, but I left a voicemail on the office line of a woman named Sarah Jenkins. She was a real estate attorney who had helped one of my patients with a messy divorce. "Hi, Sarah," I said, my voice steady over the Bluetooth. "This is Stella Perry. You helped Mr. Tavish last year. I need an appointment. Immediately. I am dealing with a coerced property transfer and identity theft involving immediate family members. I have documentation. Please call me back." I pulled into my driveway. The white van was gone. The house was dark. Save for the blue light of the TV flickering in the living room, I walked inside with the empty sparkling water bottles I had bought at a gas station just to keep up the charade. I put them on the counter. "You took forever," Delaney muttered from the dark. "Did you get the lime?" "They were out," I said. "I got lemon." "Ugh," she groaned. "You are useless." I smiled in the dark, a real, genuine smile. "I know," I said. "I am sorry." I went upstairs to my room. I undressed and got into bed. Tomorrow, my father would ask for the key. I would give it to him. He would open the safe and find it empty, but by then, I would already be gone for the day. And when the explosion happened, I wouldn't be there to absorb the blast. I would be sitting in Sarah Jenkins' office, lighting the fuse that would burn their entitlement to the ground. They wanted me to be silent, fine. I would be silent. But it would be the silence of a sniper, not a victim. I closed my eyes. The deadline was New Year's week. They thought they were racing toward a finish line. They didn't know they were sprinting toward a cliff. The office of Sarah Jenkins smelled of old leather and expensive coffee, a sharp contrast to the suffocating scent of vanilla candles and deceit that currently filled my home. Sarah was a woman of sharp angles and sharper intellect. Sitting behind a desk that looked like a fortress of mahogany, she held the photocopy of the deed transfer document my father had left on the kitchen counter, the one I had photographed before leaving the house that morning. "This is a quitclaim deed," Sarah said, her voice dry and devoid of emotion. She pushed her glasses up the bridge of her nose. "If you sign this, Stella, you are not just letting your sister live there. You are transferring your ownership interest to her. You are giving away the asset. But because your name is still on the mortgage, you remain liable for the debt. It is the worst possible financial position you could be in. You would own the debt, and she would own the house." I sat in the plush guest chair, my hands folded in my lap. "I know," I said. "I have no intention of signing it." Sarah leaned forward, her eyes narrowing. "Good, But we need to be clear about the alternative. If they are as desperate as you say, and if they have already opened accounts in your name, there is a risk they might try to sign it for you. Forgery, I said. Felony, she corrected. If a signature appears on that document that is not yours, and if that document is notarized and filed, we are moving from civil dispute to criminal fraud. My advice, do not just say no, make it impossible for them to proceed. I nodded. I am not just saying no, I am dismantling the machine. I left her office with a retainer agreement signed and a specific set of instructions. The war had moved from the skirmish lines to the trenches. The next 3 hours were spent in the parking lot of a public library, using their secure Wi-Fi. I did not trust the network at home anymore. My father prided himself on being tech-savvy. I wouldn't put it past him to have a keystroke logger on the router. I started with the credit bureaus, Equifax, Experian, TransUnion. I went through the process of freezing my credit files. It was surprisingly easy. A few clicks that slammed a steel door on my financial identity. I set up a PIN for each one, a random string of numbers that had no connection to my birthday, my social security number, or any date my family would know. Credit freeze active. No new accounts could be opened. No loans could be taken out. If my father tried to apply for another credit card in my name to fund Delaney's studio launch, he would hit a digital brick wall. Next, I went to a bank I had never used before. It was a regional credit union. Small and unpretentious. I walked in and opened a checking account. I deposited $2,000 cash I had withdrawn earlier from my main account. Would you like to order checks? The teller asked. No, I said. Just a debit card. And I need to set up online banking with two-factor authentication linked to a new email address. I was rerouting the plumbing. My paycheck from Harborline was set to direct deposit into my old account at Chase. I logged into my employee portal at work and changed the destination. Starting next pay period, my money would flow into this new, secret reservoir. The old account, the one my father had access to, the one he treated as the family fund, would soon run dry. I sat in my car afterwards, watching the traffic flow by. I felt like a ghost haunting my own life. I was severing ties, one by one, cutting the invisible cords that bound me to them. It was lonely work, but it was necessary. That evening, I returned to the house. The luminous interiors van was gone, but the living room was a disaster zone. The sconces were gone, leaving jagged holes in the drywall with wires hanging out like exposed nerves. There were paint swatches taped to every wall. Delaney was on the couch, surrounded by fabric samples. Hey, she said, not looking up. Did you see the email about the paint? I need you to transfer $500 to the contractor for the deposit. He needs it by Friday. I will look at it, I said. I walked past her, up the stairs, to my room. I locked the door. I took the backpack out of the closet, the one containing the physical files I had rescued from the safe. I sat on the floor and spread them out. I had printed the last 24 months of bank statements at the library. They lay before me like a map of a conquered territory. I took a red highlighter. I started at the beginning. January 2 years ago. Duke Energy, $340. Redmark. February, State Farm. Insurance, $180. Redmark. March. Visa payment, $200. Redmark. I went line by line, month by month. The sound of the marker cap clicking on and off was a rhythmic ticking. I highlighted every single time I had paid for something that wasn't mine. The grocery bills that included expensive steaks. The emergency cash withdrawals my father made when he had my card. The gas station fill-ups for cars I did not drive. Then I reached the mysterious GBS payment, the one I had identified as Granite Bay Services. I had dug deeper at the library. I had called their customer service line, pretending to be confused about a payment, because I had the account number from the credit report and my own social security number. The automated system let me in. It was a personal loan, taken out 3 years ago. The principal amount was $15,000. The purpose listed on the application, small business startup, inventory. I looked at the date. 3 years ago was when Delaney had tried to start her bespoke candle company. She had made 50 candles, sold 3 to our aunt, and then abandoned the project because wax is messy. My father had taken out a $15,000 loan in my name to fund a candle hobby that lasted 2 weeks, and I had been paying off the interest for 3 years. I looked at the statement. The balance was still $14,000. I had paid over $11,000 in monthly installments, and I had barely touched the principal. I felt a cold burn in my chest. It wasn't just theft, it was waste. They were burning my labor. My hours standing on concrete floors helping patients walk. My sweat and my stress, and they were turning it into ash. I stared at the Red Sea on the papers. If I added it all up, the mortgage they didn't pay, the utilities, the insurance, the loans, the credit cards, the number was astronomical. It was the price of a luxury car. It was the price of a down payment on a second home. I could have walked downstairs right then. I could have thrown the papers in my father's face. I could have screamed that I knew about the candle loan, about the credit cards, about the lies, but I stopped myself. If I screamed now, they would scramble. My father would come up with a story. He would say it was a misunderstanding, a clerical error, a surprise investment he was planning to tell me about. He would gaslight me. He would use my anger to paint me as unstable. Delaney would cry and say I was ruining her creative process. No, anger is a flare. It burns bright and dies out. Revenge is a slow-setting concrete. I wanted them to feel the consequences, not the noise of an argument, but the silent, crushing weight of reality. I wanted them to reach for a lifeline and find nothing but air. I gathered the papers. I scanned them all into a PDF file using my phone. I named the file the Perry Audit. I opened my email. I composed a new message addressed to myself. I attached the Perry Audit. I attached the screenshots of the text messages where my father demanded the key to the safe. I attached the photos of the holes in the wall. I hit send. The evidence was now in the cloud. It was replicated. It was safe. The next day, Thursday, I took a long lunch break. I didn't go to the notary. I went to an apartment complex called Creekview. It was 20 minutes away from Westbridge. It was not a luxury complex. It was a series of brick buildings from the 90s, solid and unassuming. I met the leasing agent, a cheerful woman named Brenda. "We have a one-bedroom on the second floor," she said. 700 square feet. It is small, but it faces the woods. I walked into the apartment. It smelled of fresh paint and carpet shampoo. The living room was a tiny square. The kitchen was a galley with basic white appliances. There was no bay window. There were no crown moldings. It was the most beautiful thing I had ever seen. "I will take it," I said. "We need to run a credit check," Brenda warned. "Go ahead," I said. I unthawed my file for 24 hours just for this. I signed the lease. I paid the deposit with a cashier's check from my new bank account. I got the key. It was a single, silver key. It felt heavy in my hand, heavy with promise. I spent the next 2 evenings moving in secret. I didn't take furniture. I couldn't risk the noise. I took clothes. I took my documents. I took the small things that mattered, my favorite mug, a framed photo of my mother that Delaney hadn't claimed, my nursing certification. I brought them to the new apartment in laundry bags, pretending I was taking clothes to the dry cleaner. My father didn't notice. He was too busy calling the notary to confirm the appointment for Tuesday. "Tuesday at 2, he reminded me Friday night. "Do not be late, Stella. This is the start of a new chapter." "I know," I said. "I will be ready." Sunday night arrived. The night before the beginning of the end, the house was quiet. My father and Delaney had gone out to celebrate pre-closing, drinking champagne on my dime at a local bistro. They had left the lights on. They had left the heating blasting. I sat at my desk in the guest room. I opened my laptop. I logged into the old bank account one last time. The balance was low, but there was enough to cover the mortgage payment that had just cleared. That was important. I would never default on the mortgage. The house was my asset. I would protect the asset. But the rest, I clicked on the Scheduled Payments tab. The list stared back at me. The parasites attached to my vein. State Farm Insurance. Glen Perry. Due in 3 days. Granite Bay Services. The Candle Loan. Due in 5 days. Visa ending 5590. Delaney's Fun Money. Due in 7 days. Duke Energy. Due in 10 days. Verizon Wireless. Due in 12 days. My finger hovered over the mouse. For years, I had been the wall that held back the wind. I had been the roof that kept out the rain. I had protected them from the consequences of their own laziness, their own greed, their own incompetence. I had thought I was being a good daughter. I realized now I had just been an enabler. I had deprived them of the most important lesson life has to offer, the lesson of cause and effect. It was time to let the wind blow. It was time to let the rain fall. I clicked the gear icon next to the insurance payment. Cancel. Are you sure? Yes. I clicked the gear icon next to the loan payment. Cancel. Are you sure? This may impact your credit rating. Yes. I had already disputed the account as fraudulent with the credit bureaus earlier that day. The block was in place. I clicked the gear icon next to the credit card. Cancel. I clicked the gear icon next to the electric bill. Cancel. I worked my way down the list until it was white and clean. The only thing remaining was Stella Perry. Mortgage. I sat back. The room felt different. The air felt thinner, cleaner. I had cut the pipes. The water was still in the lines, so the tap would work for a day or two. They wouldn't notice immediately. Delaney would still swipe her card tomorrow morning for her latte. My father would still drive his car. The lights would still turn on. But the reservoir was gone. The flow had stopped. I closed the laptop. I stood up and looked around the room. I had already moved everything that mattered to the apartment at Creekview. This room was just a shell now. I went to bed, but I didn't sleep. I lay awake, listening to the sound of the front door opening downstairs. I heard their laughter as they came in, drunk on entitlement and my champagne. "To the new studio," Delaney shouted. "To the future," my father bellowed. I stared at the ceiling and whispered my own toast into the darkness. To the reality check. Tuesday was coming. And they had no idea that the pen I was bringing to the meeting wasn't for signing a deed. It was for writing them out of my life. The fallout began exactly 72 hours after I clicked the cancel button. It was a Friday evening, the kind of winter night where the air feels tight and brittle, waiting for something to snap. I was in the kitchen, slowly washing a single mug, when the front door flew open with enough force to shutter the frame. Delaney stormed in. She wasn't just angry, she was vibrating with the specific, panicked humiliation of someone who has been publicly shamed. She threw her keys onto the counter, narrowly missing the fruit bowl. "What did you do?" she screamed. Her face was blotchy, her mascara smeared under one eye. "What the hell did you do to the visa?" I didn't turn around. I kept scrubbing the rim of my mug. "I am not sure what you mean," I said, my voice even. "I was at the checkout," she yelled, her voice cracking. I was at the checkout at Whole Foods with a line of 5 people behind me. I had $200 of groceries in the cart, and the card declined. Declined. The cashier looked at me like I was a criminal. I had to leave the cart there. I had to walk out. She slammed her hand on the quartz countertop. Then I went to the camera store to pick up the lighting gel. Declined again, the guy said. "Call your bank." I called the number on the back of the card, and they said the account is closed. Closed. Stella. My father appeared from the living room, drawn by the noise. He was wearing his reading glasses and holding his phone, looking more annoyed by the disruption than concerned. "Calm down, Delaney," he said, holding up a hand. "It is probably a fraud alert. I will call them. Stella probably just forgot to authorize the large purchases." He turned his gaze to me, expecting me to apologize and fix it. "Stella, unlock the card. Your sister is upset." "I cannot unlock it," I said, drying my hands on a towel. "It is not locked. It is cancelled." The room went dead silent. The hum of the refrigerator seemed to roar. "Excuse me," my father said, his voice dropping to that dangerous, low register. "I cancelled the card," I repeated, "and the insurance payment, and the loan auto draft. I removed my bank account from all of them." My father stared at me. For a moment, he looked like he couldn't process the language I was speaking. "You cancelled the insurance. My car insurance." "Yes," I said. "It is your car. It should be your insurance." "You are trying to ruin me," he whispered, the realization dawning on him. "I drive that car to my appointments, if I get pulled over." "Then you should probably pay the premium," I said. "I believe there is a grace period. You have time." Before he could respond, his phone rang in his hand. He looked at the screen. It was a local number. He answered it on speaker, out of habit, or perhaps because he was too shocked to lift the phone to his ear. "This is Glenn," he said. "Mr. Perry, this is State Farm agent regarding your policy ending in 449. A woman's voice chirped into the tense kitchen air. "We received a notification of a payment reversal from the primary funding source. We need to update your payment method immediately to avoid a lapse in coverage. The amount due is $180. My father's face turned a deep, mottled red. He jabbed the end call button so hard I thought the screen would crack. "You reversed it," he snarled at me. "You didn't just stop it. You took the money back." "I disputed the unauthorized charges," I said calmly, "because I did not authorize them." "I am your father," he roared. The explosion had finally arrived. "I authorize them. I am the head of this family." "You are not the head of my bank account," I said. Delaney was scrolling frantically on her phone. "Oh my God," she gasped. The Wi-Fi bill. I just got an email. Action required, payment failure. Stella, if the internet goes down, I cannot upload the teaser trailer. I have a schedule, I have sponsors. Then pay the bill, I said. It is $80 a month. You spend that on lunch. I don't have $80, she screamed. I invested everything into the studio branding. You are supposed to handle the overhead. That was the deal. I never signed a deal, I said. You are sabotage personified. Delaney threw her hands up. You are doing this on purpose. You are jealous because I am about to make it big, and you are just a miserable nurse who washes old people. Physical therapist, I corrected automatically. And yes, I am doing it on purpose. I am stopping the theft. My father stepped toward me. He was a large man, and for the first time in my adult life, he used his size to intimidate me. He loomed over me, his face inches from mine. You turn those payments back on, he commanded. Right now, you sit down at that computer and you fix this mess before I lose my patience. No, I said. He grabbed my arm. His grip was tight, painful. You listen to me, you ungrateful little... I pulled my arm back. I didn't flinch. I looked at his hand, then at his eyes. Get out of my way, I said. He stepped back. Not because he was afraid of me physically, but because he saw something in my eyes he hadn't seen before. A complete absence of fear. He turned and marched to the wall phone, the landline I still paid for because he refused to use a cell phone for official business. He snatched the receiver off the cradle. I am calling the police, he spat. This is elder abuse. You are financially abusing a senior citizen. You are endangering my welfare by cutting off my transport and my medical access. Let's see how your licensing board likes a police report on your record. Delaney looked at him, eyes wide. Dad, wait. No, he shouted. She wants to play legal games. We will play. I am 68 years old. I have rights. She is manipulating a vulnerable person. He dialed 911. I stood there and watched him. I didn't lunge for the phone. I didn't beg. I leaned against the counter and crossed my arms. Go ahead, I said. Tell them to come to 412 Maple Drive. I will wait, he spoke into the receiver. His voice transforming instantly into the shaky, terrified rasp of a victim. Yes, please help. My daughter has cut off my heat. She is threatening me. I am afraid, yes. Please hurry. He hung up and looked at me with a smirk that was pure malice. They are 5 minutes away. You better start apologizing. Stella, maybe I will tell them it was a misunderstanding if you transfer $5,000 to my account right now. I will save my breath for the officers, I said. I walked past him, went to the hall closet, and put on my coat. I grabbed the folder I had prepared, the emergency packet Sarah, my lawyer, had told me to keep on hand. I went out to the front porch and waited. The blue lights swept across the neighborhood lawns 4 minutes later. 2 cruisers pulled up. The neighbors were already peeking through their blinds. This was the ultimate shame in Westbridge, a police visit. My father thought this would break me. He thought the embarrassment would force me to fold. He didn't understand that when you have already burned the bridge, you don't care about the smoke. 2 officers walked up the driveway. One was older, Sergeant Miller. The other was young, Officer Davis. My father burst out the front door before they even reached the steps. He was performing. He was hunched over slightly, clutching his chest. Officers, he gasped. Thank God. She is in there. She is crazy. She cut off the power. She cut off my insurance. I cannot get to my doctor. She is trying to force me out into the cold. Sergeant Miller looked at me. I was standing calmly on the top step, holding my folder. Ma'am, Miller asked, is this your father? Yes, I said. This is Glenn Perry. Is he in immediate danger? Miller asked. Did you cut off the power to the home? The power is on, I said, pointing to the glowing porch light and the warm windows. The heat is set to 70 degrees. There is food in the fridge. The water is running. Miller looked at the house, then back at my father. Sir, you said the power was cut. She cut the payments, my father sputtered, straightening up, forgetting his act for a second. She canceled the auto pay on the bills. She canceled my car insurance. That is financial violence. I stepped forward and handed Sergeant Miller the folder. Officer, I said clearly, I am the sole owner of this property. Here is the deed. Here is my identification. These 2 people, my father and my sister, are guests in my home. They do not pay rent. They do not contribute to utilities. For 3 years, I have voluntarily paid their personal bills as a kindness. Yesterday, I stopped paying their personal bills. I did not evict them. I did not turn off the utilities to the house. I am still paying those. I simply stopped paying for his car and her credit card. Officer Davis shone his flashlight on the deed. He looked at the bank statements I had included, showing the years of payments. "This is a civil matter," Miller said, handing the folder back to me. He looked at my father with a distinct lack of sympathy. "Sir, your daughter is not required by law to pay your car insurance. That is not elder abuse. That is that is life. She is doing it to intimidate me," my father yelled. "She is trying to coerce me." "It sounds like she is just balancing her checkbook, sir," Miller said dryly. "Unless there is a threat of physical violence, we cannot do anything here. You have heat, you have water, you have access to the dwelling." "Yes, but—" "Then have a good night," Miller said. He turned to me. "Ma'am, if you want them removed, you will need to go through the formal eviction process given how long they have lived here. We cannot kick them out tonight, but neither can we force you to pay their bills." "I understand," I said. "I have a lawyer handling the next steps." "Good luck," Miller said. He tipped his hat and walked back to the cruiser. My father stood on the lawn, illuminated by the departing taillights. He looked small. The performance had failed. The audience had walked out. He turned to me, his face twisted in hate. "You humiliated us." "You called them," I said. "I just answered their questions." I walked back inside. Delaney was sitting on the stairs, crying. Not the fake, manipulative crying she used to get her way, but real, scared tears. She had heard everything. "Stella," she sniffled as I walked past. "Stella, stop. Please. I cannot work if I cannot buy equipment. I cannot launch. Just give me 1 month. Just 1 month. I promise. Once the studio is done, I will pay you back. I will sign a contract. Just turn the card back on." She reached out and grabbed the hem of my coat. "Please, I am your sister." I looked down at her. I saw the girl I used to protect on the playground. I saw the girl I used to buy ice cream for when she scraped her knee. But then I saw the woman who had ordered neon signs while I was working double shifts. I saw the woman who called me useless because I bought the wrong sparkling water. "It is being handled," I said. "What does that mean?" she wailed. "What is being handled?" "Everything," I said. I went to my room and closed the door. My heart was pounding, but it wasn't from fear. It was from the exertion of holding up a mirror to people who had never looked at themselves in their lives. I sat down at my desk and opened my laptop to check my email. I wanted to see if Sarah had sent over the draft for the cease and desist order for the defamation I knew was coming next. There was no email from Sarah, but there was an email from the fraud department of Granite Bay Credit Union. Subject urgent. Verification required for supplemental mortgage application. I froze. I clicked it open. "Dear Ms. Perry, we have received your application for a home equity line of credit HELOC in the amount of $150,000, secured by the property at 412 Maple Drive. Before we can proceed to closing, we require a secondary verification of your income documents, as the W-2s submitted appear to be from a self-employment entity rather than Harborline Rehab." I stared at the screen. The timestamp showed the application had been submitted 4 hours ago. While I was driving home, while they were drinking champagne, they hadn't just planned to have me sign the deed on Tuesday. They had already applied for a loan against the equity of the house. They were going to strip the value out of the property the second they tricked me into signing it over, or perhaps they were trying to do it before the transfer, forging my name to get the cash now. And they had listed self-employment income, Delaney's non-existent studio income. They were using my house to launder her fantasy into cash. My father's words from the lawn echoed in my head. "You better start apologizing." He wasn't desperate. He was actively criminal. I picked up my phone. I didn't call my father. I didn't call Delaney. I took a screenshot of the email and forwarded it to Sarah with 3 words in the subject line. Subject: "They just escalated." I looked at the door of my room, downstairs. I could hear them arguing, their voices low and frantic. They were trying to figure out how to fix the cracks in the dam. They didn't know the water had already washed away the foundation. I wasn't just going to stop them. I was going to catch them. Tuesday wasn't going to be a meeting. It was going to be a trap. The call that changed everything from a family dispute into a felony investigation came at 9 o'clock on Monday morning. I was sitting in my car in the parking lot of Harborline, preparing to walk in for my shift, when my phone buzzed with a number I didn't recognize. The caller ID simply said, "Granite Bay Credit Union, Fraud Prevention." I answered on the first ring. "This is Stella Perry," I said. "Ms. Perry, this is Marcus Vance from the Risk Assessment Department at Granite Bay." The voice on the other end was clipped, professional, and urgent. We are reviewing a priority application for a home equity line of credit secured by the property at 412 Maple Drive. We have a few discrepancies regarding the signatures on the promissory note that was uploaded to our portal last night. My blood ran cold. I gripped the steering wheel. I did not apply for a home equity line of credit. Mr. Vance. There was a pause on the line, the sound of typing. I see, Vance said, his tone shifting from bureaucratic to alert. We have an application here submitted electronically at 7 p.m. on Sunday. It lists a Glenn Perry as the primary applicant and you, Stella Perry, as the co-signer and collateral owner. It includes a digital scan of a power of attorney document, allegedly signed by you, granting Mr. Perry the authority to encumber the property. A power of attorney, the world tilted on its axis. My father hadn't just bullied me. He had forged a legal instrument that gave him the rights of a king over my life. He hadn't just assumed I would sign the deed on Tuesday. He had already created a failsafe in case I didn't. He had created a fake version of me, a paper Stella who agreed to everything. Mr. Vance, I said, my voice shaking with a rage so cold it felt like ice water in my veins. I need you to listen to me very carefully. I did not sign that document. I have never granted my father power of attorney. That signature is a forgery. Okay, Vance said. I am flagging the application as fraudulent immediately. We will cancel the request and— No, I interrupted. Do not cancel it yet. Ma'am, if you cancel it now, he will get an automated email saying it was declined. I said, he will know I caught him. He will panic and destroy the evidence. I need you to keep the application in pending review status for 3 more hours. Ms. Perry, I cannot knowingly process a fraudulent loan, Vance argued. I am not asking you to process it, I said. I am asking you to pause. I have a meeting with him and a notary at 2 o'clock this afternoon. He thinks we are just signing a deed transfer. If he believes the loan is still moving forward, he will walk into that office with the forged documents in his hand. I need him to produce them in front of a witness. Vance was silent for a long moment. He was a banker, not a detective, but he understood the game. I can hold the file for 24 hours pending additional signature verification, Vance said. But Ms. Perry, if that power of attorney is notarized, you have a very serious problem. It means a notary public has either been duped or is complicit. Send me the file, I said. Send me everything he uploaded. 5 minutes later, the PDF arrived in my inbox. I opened it on my phone. There it was, a request for $150,000. The stated purpose of the loan commercial investment, Luminous Interiors, LLC. I scrolled down to the breakdown. $100,000 was designated for studio construction and equipment. $50,000 was designated for management fees payable to Glenn Perry. They were not just kicking me out, they were stripping the house to the studs financially. They were going to take the equity I had built over 3 years of double shifts and pour it into Delaney's vanity project and my father's pocket. And because my name was on the deed, I would be the one left paying back the loan when Delaney got bored and the studio failed. I scrolled to the bottom. There was my name, Stella Perry. The signature was loopy, slanted to the left. It looked like the signature on my high school report cards. It looked like the way my father thought I signed my name, but I signed with a sharp, jagged slant to the right. I forwarded the document to Sarah, my lawyer. Then I called in sick to work. I wasn't going to save patients today. I was going to save myself. I drove to the location my father had texted me. It wasn't a law office. It was a pack and ship store in a strip mall that offered mobile notary services. It was cheap, quick, and anonymous. Exactly the kind of place you go when you don't want too many questions asked. I arrived at 1 o'clock, a full hour early. I parked my car at the far end of the lot, facing the entrance. I reclined my seat and waited. At 1:45, my father's car pulled in. I watched them get out. It was sickening to watch their confidence. My father was wearing a suit jacket over his jeans, trying to look the part of the successful investor. Delaney was wearing a beige trench coat and sunglasses, looking like she was dodging paparazzi. They were laughing. My father patted Delaney on the back as they walked toward the door. They looked like 2 people who had just won the lottery. They had no idea the ticket was fake. I let them go inside. I gave them 5 minutes. Enough time to get comfortable. Enough time to put the papers on the counter. I sat up, checked my reflection in the rearview mirror, and put on my sunglasses. I walked across the parking lot. When I entered the store, the bell above the door chimed. The notary counter was at the back. A woman with frizzy hair and a name tag that read Brenda was standing there, a stamp in her hand. My father had a stack of documents spread out on the glass counter. Delaney was leaning against a stack of shipping boxes, checking her makeup in a compact. "So, my daughter couldn't make it in person," my father was saying, his voice smooth and practiced. "She is a nurse, works impossible hours, but we have this power of attorney she signed last week specifically for this transaction. It allows me to execute the quitclaim deed on her behalf." He was sliding a paper toward Brenda. "I see," Brenda said, squinting at the document. "And this is the original?" "Yes," my father said. "Signed and witnessed." "I will just need to verify the witness signature and—" Brenda started to reach for her stamp. "Actually," I said, my voice cutting through the hum of the photocopier in the corner, "I think you should verify the donor's signature first." The three of them froze. It was a cinematic freeze, absolute and terrified. My father turned around slowly. His face went from confident to ashen gray in the span of a heartbeat. Delaney dropped her compact. It hit the linoleum floor with a loud crack, shattering the mirror. "Stella," my father whispered. I took off my sunglasses. I didn't look at him. I looked at the notary. "Hi, Brenda," I said, walking up to the counter. "I am Stella Perry, the person listed on that document, and I'm here to tell you that I did not sign that power of attorney, and I certainly did not authorize this man to transfer the deed to my home." Brenda pulled her hand back from the paper as if it were burning. She looked from me to the document, then to my father. "Sir," she asked, her voice rising in alarm, "you said she was at the hospital." "She is confused," my father stammered, trying to regain control. He stepped between me and the counter, physically trying to block my access to the notary. "Stella, you are tired. We discussed this. You signed this last week. Do not make a scene." "Move," I said. "Stella, listen to me," he hissed, his eyes wide and frantic. "You are ruining the schedule. The loan officer is waiting for the deed transfer. We need to do this today." "The loan officer isn't waiting," I said. "I spoke to Marcus Vance at Granite Bay this morning." The color drained from my father's face completely. "You called them?" "I did," I said. "And I sent them a specimen of my real signature. They know. Dad, they know you forged my name on the application. They know you forged this power of attorney. And right now, there is a fraud alert on my social security number that is flashing red on every banking terminal in North America." Delaney let out a small, strangled sound. "Dad? What does she mean, is the money coming?" "Shut up, Delaney," my father snapped. He turned back to me, and the mask fell off. There was no more benevolent father. There was only a cornered animal. "You ungrateful little witch," he snarled. "I was trying to help you. I was trying to manage the equity so it didn't just sit there rotting. You don't know how to use money. You just hoard it." "It is my house," I said. "I can burn it down if I want to, but you do not get to sell the ashes." I turned to the notary. "Brenda, I would like you to make a copy of that forged document for your records, and then I would like you to mark it as rejected due to invalid signatory, and I need a receipt of that rejection." "Absolutely," Brenda said. She was trembling. She snatched the paper away from my father before he could grab it. She slammed a red stamp on it. "Boyd." My father stared at the stamp. The ink was wet and bright. It was the color of a stop sign. It was the color of the end of his game. "This is not over," he whispered to me. "You think you are clever. You think a few phone calls makes you the boss. I am not the boss," I said. "I am the victim, and I am done being a victim." I took the receipt Brenda handed me. "Thank you." I walked out of the store. They followed me. Of course they did. They couldn't stay in there with the notary looking at them like they were criminals. In the parking lot, the wind was biting. I walked to my car, keys in hand. "Stella," Delaney screamed, running after me. "You cannot do this. The contractors are coming tomorrow. I already paid the deposit." "With whose money?" I asked, spinning around. "The money from the credit card I canceled, or the money from the loan that doesn't exist." "You are destroying my life," she shrieked. "You are jealous and old and bitter." My father caught up to her. He grabbed her shoulder to silence her. He walked up to me, stopping just a foot away. His breathing was heavy, ragged. "You have made a very big mistake," he said. His voice was low, devoid of the hysteria Delaney was showing. This was a different kind of threat. It was calm. "You think you can embarrass me? You think you can cut off the money and walk away?" "I am not walking away," I said. I am standing my ground. He leaned in. I could smell the stale coffee on his breath. I could see the veins pulsing in his temple. I know people, Stella, he said. I know how the system works better than you ever will. You might have stopped the loan today, but possession is 9/10 of the law. We are in that house. We have rights. And I will make sure you spend every dime you have trying to get us out. He paused, a cruel smile touching his lips. And as for your credit, he laughed softly. You think freezing it is enough? I have your social security number memorized. I have your mother's maiden name. I have your birth certificate. I will open accounts in states you have never even visited. I will bury you in so much paperwork and debt that you will never own anything again. I will make you radioactive. It was a chilling promise. It was the threat of a scorched earth war. He wasn't just going to fight for the house. He was going to try to erase my existence. I looked at him. I looked at the man I had spent 34 years trying to please. You can try, I said. I opened my car door. But Dad, I added, looking back at him one last time, you forgot one thing. What? He sneered. You committed fraud across state lines, I said. Granite Bay is a federal credit union. That makes it a federal crime. I don't need to sue you. I just need to hand the file to the FBI. I got in the car and locked the door. Through the window, I saw his face go slack. The confidence vanished. The threat evaporated. For the first time, he looked truly, deeply afraid. I started the engine and drove away, leaving them standing in the parking lot of a strip mall, watching their empire of lies turn into dust in the winter wind. The silence I had sought in my new apartment was short-lived. It was broken not by the noise of my physical surroundings, but by the digital shrieking of my extended family. By Wednesday morning, the narrative had been spun, polished, and distributed. My phone, which I had kept on silent, began to vibrate with the relentless persistence of a jackhammer. It started with Aunt Linda, my father's older sister. Linda lived in Florida and hadn't visited us in 5 years, yet she felt qualified to adjudicate the moral standing of my household. Her text message was a wall of blue bubbles. Stella, I just got off the phone with your father. I am shaking. I cannot believe you would throw your own flesh and blood out on the street in the middle of winter. He said you cut off his heart medication access. He said you are having a mental break. Please, honey, let us help you. You cannot keep the house just for yourself. It is sinful to be that greedy. I didn't reply. Then came the cousins, a flurry of messages asking if everything was okay with a tone that suggested they already knew it wasn't. But the real battlefield was Instagram. I created a burner account, a faceless profile with 0 followers just to monitor the damage. I navigated to Delaney's page. She had posted a black and white photo of herself looking out a window. A single, perfectly lit tear tracking down her cheek. The caption read, "Sometimes the people who are supposed to protect you are the ones who hold you back." Being chased out of my creative sanctuary by toxic jealousy, just when I was about to launch, the rug gets pulled. I am homeless. Guys, literally homeless because some people value assets over family. Betrayal, toxic family rising above. The comments were a cesspool of sympathy. OMG, stay strong, babe. Jealousy is a disease. Get well soon to her. Who does that to their sister? Karma is coming. I scrolled through the comments, watching strangers dissect my character based on the lies of a woman who had tried to remodel a house she didn't own. They called me the evil sister. They called me the landlord. It should have hurt. A few years ago, it would have crushed me. I would have called Delaney, sobbing, begging her to take it down, promising whatever she wanted just to make the public shaming stop. But I wasn't that person anymore. I looked at the screen and felt nothing but a clinical detachment. This wasn't a family dispute. It was a PR campaign. And like any campaign, it could be dismantled with facts. I called Sarah Jenkins. "They are escalating," I said as soon as she picked up. "I see it," Sarah said. "My paralegal sent me the screenshots of your sister's story, and your father has been calling my office since 8 this morning, threatening to report me to the Bar Association for conspiring to defraud him. I want to send the letter," I said. "The cease and desist. The scorched earth version," I said. 2 hours later, a courier was dispatched to 412 Maple Drive. The letter was not a suggestion. It was a legal cannonball. It outlined 3 specific points. 1, a demand to cease all defamatory statements on social media and private communications regarding my mental health and financial status, under penalty of a lawsuit for libel and slander. 2, a formal notice that any further attempts to access credit, loans, or financial instruments in my name would result in immediate filing of criminal charges with the Federal Bureau of Investigation. 3. A preservation order, demanding they not destroy, alter, or hide any financial documents currently in the house. I knew they would read it. I knew my father would turn purple. I knew Delaney would scream, but I needed to be sure of my own ground. I needed to understand the root of this madness. I sat on the floor of my new, empty living room. The afternoon sun cut across the beige carpet. I pulled the backpack toward me, the one I had smuggled out of the house. I bypassed the deed. I bypassed the recent bank statements. I reached for the bottom of the bag. For the manila envelope I had mentioned to no one for 6 years. The edges were soft and worn. I had sealed it with tape back then, as if to contain the radiation inside. I peeled the tape back. Inside was a stack of papers from the Internal Revenue Service and a collection agency called Titan Recovery. 6 years ago. My father had come to me in a panic. He was sweating, pacing my small apartment kitchen. He told me there had been a misunderstanding with his taxes from a business venture that went south. He said the IRS was threatening to place a lien on everything. He said he needed $22,000 immediately to stop the seizure. It is just a bridge loan, Stella, he had said, his eyes wet with tears. The family fund is tied up in long-term bonds. I cannot liquidate them without a massive penalty. If you can cover this, the fund will pay you back with interest in 6 months. I promise. I was 28. I had just saved $25,000 for a down payment on a starter home. It was everything I had. I gave it to him. I wrote the check to the IRS directly because he said his accounts were frozen. I paid the collection agency for the credit card debt he had hidden from my mother. And then, I waited. 6 months passed. Then a year. Every time I brought it up, he waved me off. The bonds haven't matured yet. Honey, you have to be patient. That money is growing. Think of it as your personal investment portfolio. I never saw a dime of it back. But that wasn't the secret in the envelope. The secret was what I found a year after I paid his debt. I pulled out the document I had intercepted from the mail, back then a statement from the very investment firm where he claimed the family fund was held. I had opened it by accident, thinking it was junk mail. Account balance 0, account status closed, date closed 12 years ago. The account had been closed 2 years before my mother died. I stared at the paper in the sunlight. There was no family fund. There never had been. Not when I paid his tax bill. Not when he moved into my house. Not when he promised to manage my assets. The realization I had back then was so painful I had shoved it into this envelope and buried it. I couldn't face it. I couldn't face the fact that my father wasn't just bad with money. He was a liar, a pathological liar who used the ghost of my mother's legacy to manipulate me. But looking at it now, I saw something else. I saw the architecture of his ego. My father walked around with his chest puffed out, lecturing me on finance, criticizing my spending, acting like the patriarch who provided for his flock. He believed it. He truly believed he was the provider. Why? Because I had never let him fail. When he had the tax lien, I paid it. I didn't let him hit rock bottom. I saved him. When he couldn't pay his rent, I bought a house and let him move in. I saved him. When he couldn't pay his car insurance, I put it on auto pay. I saved him. He wasn't arrogant because he was rich. He was arrogant because he had never felt the consequences of being poor. I had insulated him from his own incompetence so thoroughly that he had mistaken my safety net for his own ability to fly. He didn't think he was stealing from me. In his twisted mind, he thought he was just accessing the resources of the family corporation, of which he was the CEO. He saw my salary, my credit, my house, as downstream assets of his creation. I was the battery powering a hologram, and now, by cutting the power, I wasn't just annoying him, I was dissolving his reality. I was killing the man he thought he was. My phone rang. It was Sarah. "Stella," she said, "we have a response to the cease and desist. Already. Your father called. He didn't use a lawyer. He represented himself on the phone. He was agitated." "What did he say?" "He said that if you do not rescind the fraud alert and sign the deed transfer by Friday, he is going to sue you for breach of verbal contract regarding the house. He claims you promised him the property verbally in front of witnesses." "Delaney," I said. "His witness is Delaney." "Exactly," Sarah said. "It is a frivolous threat. It wouldn't stand up in court for 5 minutes. But he is banking on the fact that you do not want to go to court. He thinks you are scared of the conflict." She paused. "Stella, based on the forged power of attorney and the loan application, we have enough to go to the police right now. We can have him arrested for identity theft and attempted mortgage fraud. It is a felony. Do you want me to file the report?" I looked at the papers on the floor. The history of my servitude. If I had him arrested, he would play the victim. He would be the confused old man whose daughter misunderstood a paperwork error. The family would rally around him. Delaney would spin it as me sending our father to prison. He would never admit what he did. He would die believing he was the martyr. No, I said. Not yet. Stella, this is dangerous, Sarah warned. He is desperate. I know, I said. But I do not want him arrested in the dark. I want him to confess in the light. How? He wants a meeting. I said. I will give him a meeting. I formulated the plan in my head. It had to be precise. It had to be the final turning of the screw. Sarah, can we use your conference room on Friday afternoon, the big one with the recording equipment? Yes, she said slowly. But why? I am going to invite them, I said. I am going to tell them I am ready to settle. You are not settling, Sarah said. It was a statement, not a question. No, I said. I am closing the account. I hung up. I opened my text messages. I scrolled to my father's contact. The last message from him was the threat about the police from 3 days ago. I typed carefully. I wanted the ambiguity to be perfect. I wanted them to hear what they wanted to hear. Dad, I have been thinking. The social media, the fighting, it is too much. I cannot handle the stress anymore. You win. Let's meet at my lawyer's office on Friday at 4 p.m. I will bring the papers. I will take care of the house situation for Delaney once and for all. I read it over. You win. That was the bait. That was the phrase that would make him lower his guard. He would strut into that office thinking he had broken me. He would bring Delaney, thinking she was there to receive her crown. I hit send. The response came 30 seconds later. I knew you would come to your senses. We will be there. Bring the notary. I stared at the screen. He still thought he was the director of this movie. He didn't realize the genre had changed. It wasn't a family drama anymore. It was a crime documentary. I stood up and gathered the papers, the tax returns, the closed account statement, the loan for the candles, the forged power of attorney, the credit card statements. I organized them into 3 neat piles. I placed them in a binder. This wasn't just evidence. It was an autopsy report of our relationship. I went to the kitchen and poured myself a glass of water. I looked out the window at the parking lot of my cheap apartment complex. A car alarm was blaring in the distance. Friday, I whispered. I would give them one last chance. I would put the truth on the table, if they admitted it, if they showed 1 ounce of remorse, 1 ounce of recognition that I was a human being and not an asset. Maybe I would show mercy. But I knew them. They wouldn't see the truth. They would only see the keys, and that would be their end. The conference room at the law offices of Jenkins & Associates was designed to intimidate. It was a corner space wrapped in floor-to-ceiling glass, offering a panoramic view of the gray winter skyline of Raleigh. In the center of the room sat a long table made of polished mahogany, a surface so glossy it reflected the fluorescent lights overhead like a dark pool of water. I sat on one side of this table. My lawyer, Sarah, sat next to me. We were the prosecution. On the table, there were no pitchers of water, no cookies, no welcoming amenities. There was only a single, thin file folder resting in front of me. It was blue. It looked innocuous. It contained the end of the world as my family knew it. At 4 o'clock exactly, the receptionist opened the heavy oak door. Mr. Perry and Ms. Perry are here, she announced. My father walked in first. He was wearing his best suit, a navy blue number he usually reserved for funerals and weddings. He walked with a bounce in his step, the strut of a man arriving to collect a prize. He smiled at Sarah, a charming, tight-lipped expression that suggested he was forgiving us for dragging this out. Delaney followed him. She was dressed in all black, oversized sunglasses perched on her head, clutching a designer handbag that I knew for a fact she had charged to the credit card I had just canceled. She didn't look at me. She looked at the view, feigning boredom, pretending that this meeting wasn't the only thing standing between her and financial ruin. Well, my father said, pulling out a chair and sitting down opposite me. We are finally here. I'm glad you decided to stop the theatrics. Stella, we have a lot of work to do to get the studio timeline back on track. He placed his hands on the table, clasped together. I assume you have the deed transfer ready for signature. I looked at him. I looked at the confidence in his eyes, the absolute certainty that he was the protagonist of this story. Hello, Dad, I said. Hello, Delaney. Let's skip the pleasantries, Delaney sighed, checking her phone. I have a contractor on hold. Can we just sign the papers I need to get the deposit released by 5? Sarah cleared her throat. She opened a notebook and clicked her pen. The sound was sharp. like a pistol hammer being cocked. "There seems to be a misunderstanding regarding the purpose of this meeting," Sarah said. Her voice was cool, professional, and deadly. "We are not here to transfer the deed to the property at 412 Maple Drive." My father's smile faltered, just for a fraction of a second, before he recovered. "Of course we are. Stella sent me a text. She said she was ready to settle." "I am ready to settle," I said, "but settling does not mean surrendering." I reached out and placed my hand on the blue folder. I slid it across the mahogany table. It stopped directly in front of my father. "Open it," I said. My father looked at the folder, then at me. He laughed, a nervous, sputtering sound. "What is this? Another one of your spreadsheets, Stella. We do not need to review the budget right now. We need the title. Open it," I repeated. He sighed, shook his head as if dealing with a petulant child, and flipped the cover open. The first page was not a deed transfer. It was a certified copy of the current property deed, pulled from the county records that morning. "This is the deed," I said. "Read the line under owner." He stared at it. "I know what it says. Stella, it says your name. That is why we are here to change it." "It says sole owner," I corrected. "It does not say the Perry Family Trust. It does not say Glenn Perry, manager. It lists me, and only me, and attached to it is an affidavit from the bank confirming that the down payment, every single mortgage payment, and every cent of equity in that house came from my personal income. There is no family fund. There is no shared asset. Legally, you are a guest, and guests can be removed." My father's face hardened. "You are splitting hairs. We have a verbal agreement. Turn the page," I said. He hesitated, his fingers twitching. He turned the page. The second document was a spreadsheet. It was the Perry audit I had compiled, but Sarah had formatted it into a legal exhibit. It was a list of every transaction I had paid on their behalf over the last 36 months. The total at the bottom was bolded and circled in red. $54,320. "This," I said, pointing to the number, "is the amount of money I have successfully disputed with my bank and credit card companies as misappropriated funds as of this morning." Delaney leaned over to look. Her eyes went wide. 50,000, that is impossible." "It adds up," I said. "The car insurance, the clothes, the camera equipment, the dinners, the loan for the candle business that never existed." My father looked up, his face flushing a dark, angry red. "You cannot dispute those charges. I authorized them. You gave me the cards. I gave you access for emergencies," I said. "Not for a lifestyle, and certainly not for a $15,000 personal loan taken out in my name without my knowledge." Sarah leaned forward. She pulled a document from her own file, a single sheet of paper with a bank logo at the top. "Mr. Perry," Sarah said, "this is a report from the fraud department at Granite Bay Credit Union. It details an application for a home equity line of credit submitted last Sunday. The application was flagged because the signature on the collateral authorization did not match the specimen on file for Stella Perry. The air in the room seemed to vanish. My father stopped breathing. He stared at the paper in Sarah's hand as if it were a poisonous snake. "That," he stammered. "That was a mistake. I was just preparing the paperwork. I was going to have Stella sign it later." "That is not what the digital log says," Sarah said. "The log shows a power of attorney document was uploaded to bypass the need for Stella's signature. A document that was rejected by a notary yesterday because the principal Stella was standing right there denying it." Delaney sat back in her chair, her hands trembling. "I didn't know about that," she whispered. "I thought Dad said you agreed to the loan. He said you wanted to invest." "Stop it, Delaney," I said. "No, really," she insisted, her voice rising to a panic. "I didn't know he forged anything. I just wanted the studio." Sarah picked up a printed screenshot. "Is that so, Ms. Perry? Because we have a text message sent from your phone to your father's phone on Sunday night at 7:30 p.m. Sarah read the text aloud, her voice devoid of inflection. "Did the upload go through? The contractor needs cash by Friday. Sign it and withdraw the funds as soon as it clears. She will never notice until it is too late." Delaney froze, her mouth opened, but no sound came out. She looked at me, then at Dad, then at the door, realizing there was no exit from this truth. "That is conspiracy to commit bank fraud," Sarah said pleasantly. "And since the amount is over $100,000 and the institution is federally insured, you are looking at up to 30 years in federal prison, both of you." My father slammed his hand on the table. The noise echoed like a gunshot. "Enough!" he roared. He stood up, his chair scraping violently against the floor. "This is a trap. You brought us here to ambush us." "I brought you here to give you a choice," I said. Remaining seated, I was perfectly calm. "Sit down." "I will not sit down," he shouted. He pointed a shaking finger at me. "You are enjoying this, aren't you? You are enjoying humiliating your own father. After everything I did for you, I raised you, I put a roof over your head." "I put a roof over your head," I said quietly. "For 3 years. And now you want to throw me in jail," he spat. "Because of some paperwork. Because I tried to help your sister build a future. You are cold, Stella. You are ice cold. You want me to die. Is that it?" He grabbed his chest, playing the card I knew was coming. "You cut off my insurance," he said, his voice dropping to a theatrical tremble. "I drive that car to the cardiologist. If I get in a wreck, I lose everything. If I have a heart attack from this stress, it is on you. You are killing me. Does that make you feel powerful, killing your old man over money?" It was a masterful performance. If I hadn't seen the bank statements, if I hadn't seen the texts, I might have felt a twinge of guilt. But I looked at him and saw only a predator using pity as camouflage. "I do not want you to die, Dad," I said. "I just want you to pay for your own insurance." "I cannot pay it," he yelled. "I invested everything in the family in you." "There is no family investment," I said. "I know about the empty account. I know about the tax lien I paid 6 years ago. I know you have been broke for a decade and using me as a host." He went silent. The reference to the tax lien hit him hard. He didn't know I knew about the closed account. "So here is the offer," I said. I opened the folder to the last page. It was a simple, single-page document drafted by Sarah. "Option A," I said. "I hand over this file, the forged loan application, the fake power of attorney, the text messages, and the credit card fraud report to the FBI and the local district attorney. Sarah has the contacts ready. We press charges. You will be arrested. You will be indicted. You will go to prison." Delaney started to sob. "No, please, I cannot go to jail. My brand." "Option B," I continued, ignoring her. "You sign this agreement right now." I pushed the paper toward him. "It states that you will vacate the property at 412 Maple Drive by noon on Sunday. You will remove only your personal clothing and toiletries. You will leave all furniture, appliances, and fixtures, including the lighting you tried to install. You will never contact me again. You will cease all social media posts mentioning me immediately, and you will acknowledge that you have no claim, financial or otherwise, to my property." My father stared at the paper. "Where will we go?" "I have included a list of affordable rental apartments in the area," I said. "There is a complex near the highway that has vacancies. It is cheap." "You are evicting us in 48 hours, he asked incredulously. "I am giving you 48 hours to avoid a felony indictment," I said. "That is generous." He looked at Delaney, who was weeping into her hands. He looked at Sarah, who was watching him with the impassive gaze of a judge. He looked at me. And then, the anger broke through his fear. His ego couldn't handle the defeat. He couldn't accept that the infrastructure had become the architect. "You think you are so smart," he sneered. "You think you can just erase me. I made you. I managed you. You were nothing without my guidance." "I was solvent without your guidance," I said. "You needed me," he shouted. "You didn't know how to handle that credit. I had to step in. I had to use your information to open those accounts temporarily because you were too scared to leverage your own assets. I did it for us." The room went dead silent. Sarah moved her hand slightly on the table. She looked at my father. "Mr. Perry," Sarah said softly, "did you just admit that you used Stella's personal information to open accounts without her permission?" My father blinked. He realized, too late, what he had just said. "I said I managed them," he stammered. "I said I was helping." "You said you used her information to open them," Sarah corrected. "That is an admission of identity theft, and since we are in a law office..." She tapped the small black device sitting on the corner of the table. A tiny red light was glowing steady and bright. "This meeting is being recorded for legal purposes. As stated in the waiver the receptionist had you sign when you entered." My father turned pale. He looked at the device. He looked at the waiver he had scribbled his signature on without reading. Too arrogant to think he needed to read anything I gave him. He had just confessed, on tape. He slumped into his chair. The fight went out of him like air leaving a punctured tire. He wasn't the patriarch anymore. He was just an old man who had been caught. "You tricked me," he whispered. No, I said. I just let you talk. I pushed a pen across the table. It rolled and hit his hand. Sign the agreement, Dad, I said. Or Sarah calls the district attorney before you get to the elevator. He looked at the pen. His hand shook as he picked it up. He didn't look at Delaney. He didn't look at me. He scribbled his name on the line. It was a messy, defeated scrawl. He pushed the paper to Delaney. Sign it, he rasped. But Dad, she whined. Sign it, he barked, his voice cracking. It is over, Laney. It is over, Delaney signed, her tears wetting the paper. Sarah took the document. She checked the signatures. She stamped it. Sunday at noon, Sarah said. I will have a security team there to verify your departure and collect the keys. Do not take anything that isn't on the list. My father stood up. He looked older than I had ever seen him. He looked at me one last time, and I expected hate, but instead, I saw something else. Confusion. He still didn't understand how the furniture had come alive and bitten him. You are a hard woman, Stella, he said. I had to be, I answered. I learned from the best. They walked out of the room. The door clicked shut behind them. I sat there in the silence, listening to the hum of the ventilation system. I looked at the blue folder. I looked at the recording device. Sarah reached over and turned off the recorder. You did it, she said. I looked out the window at the city. The sun was setting, casting long, cold shadows across the buildings. Yes, I said. I did, but I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel happy. I felt the specific, heavy exhaustion of someone who has just amputated a gangrenous limb. The rot was gone. I would survive, but I would never be the same. What now? Sarah asked. Now, I said, standing up and buttoning my coat. I go home. My real home. Sunday was coming, and for the first time in 3 years, the house on Maple Drive would be empty, truly empty, and that was all I had ever wanted. Sunday arrived with a sky the color of a bruised plum. The air was thick with impending snow, the kind of weather that makes people huddle indoors and turn up their thermostats. But I was not indoors. I was sitting in the back of a black SUV parked 3 houses down from 412 Maple Drive. Beside me sat Sarah, my lawyer. In the front seat were 2 men from a private security firm. They were not police officers. They were large, silent professionals who specialized in high-conflict asset recovery. It is noon, Sarah said, checking her watch. The deadline has passed. Give them 5 minutes, I said. I want to see what they do. I watched through the tinted window. I expected to see a moving truck. I expected to see boxes on the curb. I expected to see defeat. Instead, I saw a white van pull into the driveway. It wasn't a mover. It was a locksmith. My father walked out of the front door. He was wearing a heavy coat and gesturing wildly. He pointed at the front door, then at the garage. He was instructing the locksmith to change the tumblers. I felt a cold, hard laugh bubble up in my chest. Even after signing the agreement, even after admitting to fraud on tape, they were still trying to play the game. They thought if they changed the locks, if they physically held the fortress, the piece of paper they signed on Friday would disappear. They thought possession was the only law that mattered. Okay, I said to the driver. Let us go. The SUV rolled forward and blocked the driveway, trapping the locksmith's van. I stepped out. The cold air hit my face, sharp and cleansing. The security team stepped out with me, flanking me like a Praetorian guard. My father spun around. When he saw me, his face twisted into a snarl. You! He shouted. He marched down the driveway, ignoring the security guards. You think you can intimidate us? We are not going anywhere. This is my home. I have rights. The locksmith, a young man who looked thoroughly confused, paused with his drill in hand. Sir, is this the daughter you mentioned? She is a trespasser, my father yelled, his voice echoing down the quiet suburban street. She is mentally unstable. She is trying to throw her family out in the snow. The noise drew attention. Mr. Henderson, my neighbor, stepped out onto his porch. Mrs. Gable across the street peeked through her curtains. My father saw his audience and pitched his voice louder, performing for the gallery. After everything I did for you, he screamed at me, I raised you, I protected you, and this is how you repay me by hiring thugs to drag your old father out of his house. Delaney appeared in the doorway. She was holding her phone up, filming. Extensive bullying, she narrated to her screen. My sister is literally attacking us with mercenaries right now. This is what toxic financial abuse looks like. Guys, I walked up the driveway. I stopped 5 feet from my father. I didn't shout. I didn't cry. I spoke with the flat, boring resonance of a judge reading a verdict. "Dad," I said, "you signed an agreement on Friday. You agreed to vacate by noon today." "I signed it under duress," he spat. "It is invalid. I am changing the locks to protect my property." "It is not your property," I said. "It is our home," Delaney shrieked from the porch. "We have squatters' rights. You cannot just kick us out without a 30-day notice." I looked it up. I looked at Sarah. She nodded. I turned back to my father. "You are right," I said. "I cannot kick you out of my house without a notice." My father smirked. He thought he had found a loophole. He thought he had won another month, another reprieve to drain me dry. "Exactly," he said, puffing out his chest. "So tell your goons to leave. We will discuss this in civil court next year." "But," I continued, my voice cutting through his victory lap, "I am not kicking you out of my house." I reached into my pocket and pulled out a single, crisp document. It wasn't a deed. It was a sales contract. "I sold the house, Dad." The smirk froze on his face. "What?" "I signed the contract 3 days ago." I said, "A cash offer. Investor special. They buy houses as is, with or without tenants. The closing was finalized electronically this morning at 9 o'clock. The deed has already been recorded." I pointed to the ground beneath his feet. "This driveway does not belong to me anymore. It belongs to a holding company called Apex Residential, and part of the sale condition was that the property be delivered vacant." Delaney lowered her phone. "You sold it." "I took care of it," I said, repeating the words I had spoken at that first dinner. "I told you I would handle the 5-bedroom house problem. You wanted the house. Well, now nobody has it." My father shook his head, his eyes darting back and forth. "You are lying. You cannot sell a house that fast." "I can when I price it $50,000 under market value for a quick cash close," I said. My father flinched as if I had slapped him. "You lost $50,000 just to spite us." "It wasn't spite," I said. "It was the cost of freedom. I paid a ransom to get my life back." I signaled to the security team. One of the men stepped forward and handed a document to the locksmith. "Sir," the guard said, "this is a criminal trespass notice from the new owners. Apex Residential. They have authorized us to clear the property. If you drill that lock, you are destroying corporate property." The locksmith packed his drill into his belt faster than I had ever seen anyone move. "I am out," he said. "I am not getting involved in this." He jumped in his van and reversed out of the driveway, nearly clipping the mailbox. My father stood alone on the concrete. The wind whipped his gray hair. He looked at the house the studio Delaney was building, the master suite he had claimed, and realized it was all gone. It wasn't just that he had to leave. It was that the asset he wanted to steal had evaporated. "You are evil," he whispered. "You destroyed our legacy." "There is no legacy," I shouted. It was the first time I raised my voice. "There is only debt and lies, and I am done drowning in them." I pulled a white envelope from my coat pocket. "This is the end. Dad," I said. "Listen to me very closely, because I am never going to speak to you again after today." I held out the envelope. Inside this envelope is a cashier's check for $3,000. It is enough for a security deposit and first month's rent at the Garden View apartments on the highway. I have also included a list of sliding-scale medical clinics for your heart condition. He stared at the envelope. He didn't take it. "This is your severance package," I said. "But it comes with a condition. If you take this, you leave right now, you get in your car, you take your boxes, and you go. If you refuse, or if you try to stay..." I looked at Sarah. "Sarah has the Granite Bay fraud file on speed dial to the district attorney," I said. "The new owners, Apex Residential, have already agreed to press criminal trespassing charges if you are here past 1 o'clock. So you have 2 choices. You can be homeless and in prison, or you can take this money and be someone else's problem." Delaney ran down the steps. She grabbed my father's arm. Dad, take the money. I cannot go to jail. I have a following." My father looked at the check. He looked at the house. He looked at the neighbors watching him. His pride was fighting a war with his survival instinct. Survival won. He snatched the envelope from my hand. "You will regret this," he snarled. "One day, you will be old, you will be alone, and you will wish you had family." I looked him in the eye. I looked at the man who had stolen my credit, my trust, and my home. "I have lived with regret for 34 years, I said. "I regret that I didn't do this sooner. You are abandoning us, Delaney screamed. You are ruining my future. I was going to be famous. I looked at my sister, the golden child, the parasite. No, Delaney, I said softly. I am not ruining your future. I am just refusing to be the floor you stand on. I turned my back on them. Clear the house, I told the security team. I walked back to the SUV and got in. I didn't watch them load their cars. I didn't watch them cry. I didn't watch my father scream at the security guards as they carried his recliner to the curb. I told the driver to take me to Creekview. 2 hours later, I was sitting in my new living room. It was small. The carpet was a generic beige. The view from the window was a parking lot and a line of pine trees. There was no crown molding. There was no bay window. There was no gourmet kitchen. It was perfect. I walked to the thermostat on the wall. I turned it up to 72 degrees. I didn't have to worry if the bill would be paid. I didn't have to worry if someone else had spent the money on neon signs. I went to the small kitchenette. I brewed a cup of coffee, cheap, store-brand coffee. I sat down at a small table I had bought from a thrift store. I placed the coffee cup on the surface. The steam rose up in a gentle spiral. My phone buzzed. It was an automated email from the bank. Transaction alert, sale of 412 Maple Drive. Proceeds deposited. The money was there. The mortgage was paid off. The debts were cleared. What was left wasn't a fortune after the quick sale and the fees. I had just enough to start over. But it was my money. Clean money. I took a sip of the coffee. It tasted like charcoal and freedom. My father was right about one thing. I was alone. There was no noise in the apartment. No TV blaring. No complaints about the wrong sparkling water. No lectures about how I was failing the family. I looked at the empty chair across from me. For years, I had been a pillar. I had been a foundation. I had been a load-bearing wall for a structure that was rotten to the core. I took another sip. I wasn't a pillar anymore. I wasn't a structure. I was just Stella. And for the first time in my life, that was enough. Thank you so much for listening to this story. If you enjoyed seeing Stella reclaim her life and deliver that final checkmate, please let me know in the comments. I want to know. Where are you listening from right now? Are you tuning in from the gym, your car, or maybe relaxing at home like Stella finally is? Drop your location in the comments. Hit that subscribe button for Maya Revenge Stories. Give this video a like and smash that hype button to help this story reach more people who need to see justice served.